This is a map of Europe, and this is a map of Europe that shows all the territory that has ever been controlled by a Habsburg. Now that's half of Europe, and it's just Europe. A map of the Americas would look something like this. But how? How did this noble family become so powerful and was the one who spread their chains across Europe? Well, let's find out. First of all, the name Habsburg comes from the castle of Habsburg that was founded in modern-day Switzerland in the 20s, like 1020, by this guy. So the Habsburg dynasty started by ruling over a small county in the Holy Roman Empire, and they were pretty friendly with the Stauffer emperors, helping them in their conquests. And because the Habsburg were good boys, they were awarded some more territory in Switzerland. After the death of Emperor Frederick II, the Great Interregnum started, which was basically a period in which no single dynasty controlled the emperorship, and many royal houses came and went on the throne. One of them was the House of Habsburg, with Rudolf I being coronated the King of Germans. After he got in power, he led a coalition against his main rival, Ottokar II of Bohemia. That's because he took advantage of the whole interregnum chaos and expanded his influence southward, in what is now Austria. So Rudolf went to end his empire. Ottokar died in the battle. Then Rudolf decided to give the duchies of Austria and Styria to his family. From now on, this will be the Habsburg center of power, not Switzerland. After Rudolf died, his successors weren't able to secure the King of German title again, but they decided they weren't done expanding either. They tried to focus on Bohemia, and when the king died without an heir, the Habsburgs took over, but this only lasted 1 year. After the Bohemian plan failed, they tried to expand in the south, which worked. They went as south as Istria and also took Tyrol. But meanwhile, the original Habsburgs lands were lost to the expanding Swiss Confederacy after the battles of Murgarden and Sempach. The internal tensions in the family also began to rise, and the dynasty split in two, in the Albertinian and the Leopoldian lines. Eventually, Albert V became good friends with the Emperor Sigismund of Luxembourg, who was also the King of Hungary and Bohemia. Definitely a very powerful monarch at that time. And Albert married his daughter. And after Sigismund died, the Habsburgs inherited Hungary and Bohemia. And since he got so big and powerful, it's only natural that he would also be elected King of Germans. But then he died fighting the Ottomans, and the Habsburg lost Hungary and Bohemia. Oh, and the Leopoldian line split again. But the good part is that this guy's son, Frederick, was elected Holy Roman Emperor. And on March 19, 1452, he was crowned Frederick III by Pope Nicholas V in a grand ceremony in Rome, where he also got married to Eleanor of Portugal. This enabled him to build a network of relations in Western Europe as well. After Frederick III, the Habsburgs will keep the title of Emperor almost continuously until the dissolution of the HRE. Frederick also strengthened his role as family leader, and united Austria under himself after the two other branches of the family went extinct. But he decided Austria isn't enough for him, so he attacked Burgundy because its ruler didn't have any sons, just a daughter. And Frederick liked the idea of marrying his son Maximilian to her. So after the siege of Neuss, the Duke said fine. Maximilian wanted to secure Burgundy for his son, but guess who didn't like this? The King of France. He also had connections with the Burgundian ruling family, and didn't like the Habsburgs expanding so close to his kingdom. So they had a big war to decide who will inherit Burgundy. In the end, they came to an agreement. The Habsburgs will take the Low Countries and the French the rest. After the death of his father, Maximilian inherited the title of Emperor, but he couldn't get to Rome to get coronated by the Pope. So with the Pope's approval, he proclaimed himself Emperor. This will set a precedent that the Emperor will not have to be coronated by the Pope anymore. The reign of Maximilian was one of expansion for the Habsburgs. He married his son Philip the Handsome to Joanna of Castile. This is perhaps one of the most important marriages in the history of Europe. And it was a happy one as well. They had 6 children. The eldest one, Charles, will grow up to become Emperor, Archduke of Austria, Lord of the Netherlands, King of Southern Italy, and King of Castile and Aragon, ruling over their colonies in the New World as well. Meanwhile, a double wedding was arranged between the Habsburgs and the family of Vladislav II of Bohemia and Hungary. This paid off 10 years later when the brother of Charles, Ferdinand, inherited Hungary and Bohemia. After the death of Charles V, the family split into the Austrian and Spanish lines. Charles' son Philip will also inherit the throne of Portugal for a period which will be called the Iberian Union. This was the height of the Habsburg Empire. This royal family became the hegemon of Europe, not through conquest, but by marrying its way to the top. But they could lose everything just as easily. So how are they going to keep all their lands? Well, the Habsburgs had a very successful policy called keeping it in the family. At this point they were part of so many European royal families, they said, well, why don't we just start marrying each other? This helped them keep their lands in the short term, but after a couple of generations of inbreeding, it started to be a problem, and it resulted in things like the famous Habsburg Joe. So if you look kind of like one of those guys, you might be the result of countless generations of Habsburg inbreeding. So good for you, I guess? Many argue that the inbreeding is the exact reason why the dynasty went extinct. The last Habsburg of the Spanish line, Charles II, was disabled from birth and he was unable to have any children. Now, I'm not an expert in genetics, but I think the fact that his parents were also uncle and niece didn't really help. His death started the War of the Spanish Succession, and after that, the Habsburg rule in Spain came to an end. 40 years later, the Emperor Charles VI, who also had a Joe, died without an heir, which started the War of the Austrian Succession. This marked the extinction of the Habsburg male line. The Succession War was won by Maria Theresa, who rebranded the dynasty as the House of Habsburg-Lorraine. 60 years later, the Holy Roman Empire got dissolved after the conquest of Napoleon Bonaparte, and with that, the Habsburg rule over Europe ended. This was the story of the Habsburgs. They got powerful from marrying into so many royal families, then they kept their power by marrying exclusively into their own royal family, then they lost everything because of so much inbreeding. The end.